this series that we want to be talking about now, we want to address 2 or 3 major issues. And those two are the driving force within the heart of every man, regardless of their social status. One is their identity, and 2 is their deep emotional needs. I want to address a verse of scripture, something the disciples could not understand, and a lot of people do not understand still today. So this is quite a profound scripture, and I want to read the scripture and then we will address that from different directions as we go along during this time. So there will be an encouragement and helping people to see those 2 deepest parts of the driving forces of our lives being addressed. This one is found in the Gospel of John in 16, and Jesus is talking to his disciples. But now I go away to him who sent me, and none of you ask me, where are you going? But because I have said these things to you, sorrow has filled your heart. Nevertheless, I tell you, it is to your advantage that I go away. For if I do not go away, the Helper will not come to you, but if I depart, I will send him to you. However, when the Spirit of truth has come, he will guide you into all truth, for he will not speak on his own, his authority, but whatever he hears, he will speak, and he will tell you the things to come. He will glorify me, for he will take of what is mine and declare it to you. All things that the Father has are mine, therefore I said that he will take of mine and declare it to you. The disciples could not understand at all what Jesus was saying. They couldn't understand why he needed to go. They couldn't understand why he could leave them. Where was he going? Why was he going? Well, he said he was going to the Father, but he said it was more advantageous to go than it was to stay. For them in their humanness, that made no sense. They could not see why he would need to be going. And today, in working with people who are believers, they have the same question, and they would like to be exactly the same as the disciples. They want Jesus to be with them. How many people don't talk with me and say, oh, if only Jesus was with me. If only Jesus was here. If only Jesus would come and put his arms around me. If only Jesus would talk to me. How wonderful it would be if Jesus was with me. I would love him to be here. I would love him to be listening to me. I would love him to be with me. That would make all the difference if only he was with me. That's exactly what the disciples were saying. We don't understand. Why did you need to go? Why did you have to go? Couldn't you just stay with us? You came to us and you tell us you're here, then you tell us you're going, and then you tell us it's important that I go, then you tell us it's to our advantage that we go. You're not making any sense. And so Jesus goes to try to explain to them, to which is the revelation that I now want to be able to impart into the lives of God's people, which is important for me and for the message that I teach into the lives of others. It has a vital implication. What does it really mean? What's the advantage? What is the benefit? And why is it so many of us want Jesus to be with us, to be here? How we would love to have lived in Jesus' time. If only we had been with the disciples. If only we had walked in the Sea of Galilee with him. If only we had gone out in the boat with him. If only we had seen him walking through the crowds of suffering, the people in pain, the demon-possessed being delivered, the lame walking and the blind seeing. If only we'd heard him preaching the gospel. If only we'd been able to sit up in the mountain and listen to him teaching those profound words. If only we'd been with Jesus. That would have been most incredible. How good it would have been. That would have been so good to be back there. And yet just before Jesus is to leave, he says, the truth is, that's not the best. That is not the highest. It actually is more advantageous for me to go away. So during our series, we're going to be looking at why is it more advantageous, what is Jesus speaking about, and what has that got to do with my true identity And what has that got to do with my deepest emotional needs? So now, as we are looking at that, I would like us to go back to understand the principle. Because in the original principle, man himself was made for God. And man's deepest needs were for love, acceptance, security, assurance, total commitment, and significance. Everybody wants those needs met in their life. And those needs are vital to every human being. Regardless of who they are, where they come from, what their culture is, everybody seeks those to be filled. Man was born with those needs, but those are spiritual needs. That's why God has the monopoly. That's why God has the monopoly in our lives, because God made those to be spiritual needs, so finally only God can meet them. And that's why God has the advantage. And so man can only find them to be met in the Spirit. And that's why in the Gospel of John, Jesus is back referring to the initial way in which man was supposed to be relating to God. Not from an external physical position, but from a very deep internal position, to be able to meet the very deepest needs. So now, man sins in the garden, and when man sinned in the garden, he died to God in the Spirit. And now that he dies to God in the Spirit, he dies to those needs being met. And so now that he dies to those needs being met, man no longer is satisfied deep within his innermost being. Pascal, the scientist and philosopher, aptly put it when he said it like this: there is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of every man and woman. It will never be filled by any created thing, but only by the Creator made known to us in Jesus Christ. There now is a vacuum, and just like it said in the Proverbs, God has placed eternity in every man's life and can only ever be filled by God Himself. We were made for God. One lady came up in a seminar and she had just given her life to Jesus. And she said, "You know, I just feel like I've come home." And I said to her, "Lady, but that's what it's all about. Coming to Jesus is a homecoming." And now, when we come to Christ, that is when we have a born-again experience, our spirits are regenerated, and now we reconnect back with God.